For many years, the galaxy lived in peace under the rule of the Galactic Federation. Thousands of species from across the stars had agreed to follow a single code: no more war, no more conquest. The memory of ancient battles had faded, and the galaxy believed that danger was a thing of the past. Then, one day, something appeared at the edge of known space, something that should not have existed. A massive black ship, silent and terrifying, entered Sector 17 without warning. It didn't respond to any calls or signals. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't explain its presence. The sensors of nearby stations failed to understand what it was made of. Its armor was unlike anything the Federation had ever seen. It seemed to absorb light, giving it a shadow-like appearance even in the bright light of the stars. No living being had ever seen a ship like this before. It was called the Vanguard, and it carried no flags, no colors, only a symbol. No one recognized a human symbol. But that was impossible. Humans were believed to be extinct or lost somewhere in the forgotten systems. 100 years ago, during the Great Expansion Wars, humans had vanished after refusing to join the Galactic Federation. Some thought they had destroyed themselves. Others believed they were too weak to survive. But now one of their warships had returned, and it was not weak. The first ones to encounter it were a group of trade vessels passing through the sector. They sent a standard greeting, expecting nothing unusual. But within moments, the trade vessels shut down. Not destroyed, not damaged, just silent and cold, their systems frozen by an unknown force. The crews later reported they had seen the ship from afar, unmoving, watching. Some said it scanned their minds. Others claimed they heard whispers in their communication systems. One thing was clear: they had been allowed to live, and that mercy terrified them more than death. The Federation quickly dispatched a scout fleet to investigate. 5 warships, each with high-ranking officers, sent to demand answers. But when they arrived, the Vanguard had already moved closer to a nearby Federation outpost. The outpost went dark the moment the ship came into range. All communications were cut off, and by the time the fleet reached it, the outpost was gone. No wreckage, no survivors, just a crater in space where it used to be. The scout fleet tried to form a battle line, hoping to scare the ship off, but it didn't move. Instead, it turned slowly to face them. No weapons fired. No threats made. One by one, the scout ships reported strange system failures. Lights flickered. Engines shut down. The lead admiral ordered a retreat, but only 3 of the 5 ships made it back. The others vanished without a trace. Panic spread through the Federation like wildfire. Who were these humans? How did they build such a ship? And what did they want? The Vanguard didn't attack planets or demand territory. It didn't respond to any message. It simply moved from one sector to another, always silent, always watching. Some believed it was a scout, sent to study the galaxy before a human invasion. Others said it was an ancient AI ship, now free from its creators and following its own path. But a small number of people feared the truth was worse, that it was a message, a warning. Humanity had returned, and they had not forgotten the past. The Council of Species met in emergency session. Leaders from over 200 planets gathered in secret, discussing whether to send their full fleets to destroy the ship. But no one wanted to be the first to fire. They all remembered what happened to the outpost, to the scout ships, to the trade vessels. Attacking it might mean waking something far worse. The Vanguard didn't speak, but its silence was louder than any declaration of war. It sent a signal without sending anything at all: we are watching, we are ready, and we are not afraid. Some smaller civilizations began to evacuate nearby systems, fearing they might be next. A few even tried to contact the humans in secret, offering information, resources, anything for protection. But none received a reply. The Vanguard followed no pattern. It moved through space like a ghost, choosing its path without reason. Every time someone thought they had understood its route, it changed direction. Every attempt to trap it failed. Every plan to track it ended in failure. Scientists tried to study its energy readings but found nothing familiar. It used no known fuel, gave off no recognizable heat, and didn't match any database of existing technology. One young researcher called it a walking paradox. The more they studied it, the more it refused to be understood. And in the center of this mystery was one truth. This was only the beginning. What scared the galaxy most wasn't the damage the Vanguard could do, but the silence that followed it. Silence meant control. Silence meant confidence. And silence from a human warship meant that it was not alone. Somewhere out there, in the blackness of forgotten space, the rest of humanity might be waiting. Watching. Preparing. The Vanguard had arrived not to fight a war, but to remind the galaxy that humanity had survived and they were no longer the species that could be ignored. The arrival of the warship changed everything, and everyone knew that the age of peace was over. The silence of the humans had spoken louder than any weapon ever could. The galaxy had been holding its breath since the Vanguard appeared, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the ship would vanish as mysteriously as it had arrived. But that hope shattered the moment it made its first move. It didn't happen in a war zone or a military sector. It happened in a quiet, distant region called Tarsus V, where a Federation research station floated peacefully above a barren moon. The scientists aboard had studied space anomalies for decades without incident, believing they were far from the concerns of politics and war. But on a cold morning, the shadows around their station deepened, and the Vanguard emerged from a warp tier in space like a black blade slicing through the void. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. The station's sensors didn't detect its approach. It just appeared impossible, soundless, perfect. Within seconds, all systems on the station began to fail. Lights dimmed, control panels sparked, and alarms screamed with errors no one had ever seen before. The scientists tried to send out a distress signal, but their communication arrays had been silenced by something unseen. They were not under attack in the traditional sense. They were being studied, scanned, stripped apart at the atomic level by something they couldn't fight. Then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. The power returned. Lights came back. Systems rebooted. And when the terrified researchers looked outside, the Vanguard was gone. But the message it left behind was terrifying. A single signal burned into their main console. Observation complete. It was the first sign that the ship was not here by accident. It had a purpose. And that purpose was now spreading fear across the galaxy. The Federation command had no choice but to respond. Fearful of what might come next, they decided to take action before the ship could do more. They selected a heavily fortified base in the Zetheron cluster, far from civilian populations, and prepared it for battle. Dozens of warships gathered there, armed with the best weapons available. Generals, admirals, and strategists spent days planning the trap. Their idea was simple: lure the Vanguard in, surround it, and destroy it before it could escape. But even with all their strength, they were still playing a game they didn't understand. The Federation used a fake transmission about a new power source being tested at the base, hoping the humans' curiosity would lead them there. And it worked. 3 days later, the Vanguard entered the Zetheron cluster, calm and unchallenged. It moved without fear, approaching the base slowly, almost as if it already knew what was coming. When it reached the outer defense line, the Federation gave the signal. 47 warships attacked in perfect unison, releasing a storm of missiles, plasma blasts, and energy beams. The sky lit up like a dying sun, and for a moment they believed they had succeeded. But when the smoke cleared, the Vanguard was still there. Not a scratch. Not a single mark. It had raised some kind of invisible barrier, one that had absorbed everything they had thrown at it. Then it responded. Not with missiles, not with lasers, but with a weapon no one had ever seen. A quiet pulse of energy rippled out from the ship, spreading across space like a wave in a calm sea. Every Federation ship it touched immediately shut down. Their engines died, weapons locked, shields fell. The crews inside screamed in panic as their systems froze and their ships drifted helplessly through space. Then, with unbelievable precision, the Vanguard moved forward and fired one shot. Just one. A beam of dark light, silent and focused, cut through the command station of the base and erased it from existence. There was no explosion, just a sudden void where it used to be. All the data, All the leadership, all the plans gone in a blink. The rest of the ships, disabled and powerless, were ignored. The Vanguard turned and vanished into space, leaving behind only silence and fear. The Federation had not just failed to destroy the human warship they had been humiliated. Their most advanced fleet had been defeated without a single casualty on the other side. The message was now louder than ever. This ship could not be stopped. News of the attacks spread quickly. Across the galaxy, leaders argued over what to do next. Some wanted to declare total war against humanity. Others urged caution, believing further aggression would only bring more destruction. Smaller civilizations began to surrender preemptively, hoping to be spared. Panic took hold of every council and government. Who were these humans, and why had they returned with such power? Why now? And what was their goal? The scariest part wasn't the weapon, it was the silence. The Vanguard didn't speak. It didn't ask. It didn't explain. It simply acted. Like a force of nature, it destroyed only what it wanted and ignored everything else. And no one could predict its next move. Deep inside Federation archives, hidden away from the public, old reports began to resurface. Long-forgotten files from before the Great Expansion, back when humans still walked among the stars. Warnings from early explorers who claimed humans were different not because of their technology, but because of their will. They were survivors, fighters, thinkers, builders of impossible things. And now, it seemed, they had returned with a warship not just built for battle, but for psychological domination. The first strike was over, but the real war had just begun. The Federation had made a terrible mistake. They believed the humans were gone. They believed the galaxy belonged to them. But now, they realized something far worse. The Vanguard was not here to conquer. It was here to remind them all that humanity had not forgotten the past. They had been watching, preparing. And their first strike was not the end, it was only the beginning of something far more terrifying. After the terrifying first strike, the galaxy finally accepted a truth it had been trying to ignore. Vanguard was not a myth, not a legend from humanity's lost era, but a living nightmare wrapped in steel and silence. The fear it left behind wasn't just because of the destruction, but because of how little anyone understood it. It had no crew signals, no communication attempts, no signs of weakness, and yet it moved like it had a mind of its own. The Federation's best minds concluded that the warship was controlled by something more advanced than any known AI, maybe even by something not quite machine, not quite human. But if they could not understand it, they would destroy it. That was the command now whispered across secret star councils and deep command chambers. They named the operation Silent Eclipse. Every empire, every powerful race, even rival factions who hated each other, now united under one desperate mission to erase the Vanguard before it erased them. And so, the hunt began. It wasn't just about firing weapons anymore. This was now a game of shadows, traps, and ancient secrets. First, they built Ghost Fleet's ships without life on board, controlled remotely to bait the Vanguard into revealing its position. These decoy fleets spread out across hundreds of sectors, pretending to carry weapons, energy sources, or data they hoped the Vanguard would find interesting. But the ship was smarter than they expected. It ignored the baits. It avoided the obvious traps. It moved between black holes, nebula storms, even drifting with radiation clouds places no normal ship would go. It wasn't just avoiding capture, it was learning from the galaxy, observing, calculating. And that terrified them even more. The hunters were being watched by their prey. In a desperate attempt, the Federation turned to the oldest archives of the galaxy, the ruins of the Forgotten Rings, ancient structures said to be older than any known race. Their historians believe the humans might have hidden something there, or that perhaps. The ship itself drew energy from technologies buried in those ruins. A special force was dispatched to investigate. They reached the rings after a long, dangerous journey, and what they found shocked them: giant machines buried under stone and dust, still glowing faintly, with symbols that matched the same patterns on Vanguard's hull. The researchers believed they had found the key, a source of control. But the moment they tried to interact with the machines, the sky darkened, and Vanguard appeared above them like a god protecting its temple. No warnings. No chance to speak. It fired a silent beam through the sky, not at the researchers but at the ruins. In 1 second, centuries of ancient mystery turned into ash. The message was clear: stay away. The ship didn't care if you were curious. It didn't want diplomacy. It was guarding something. The Federation now understood the worst truth of all: Vanguard wasn't just a weapon. It was a guardian. But of what? They didn't know. Now the hunters were more desperate. They built a ship unlike any other, named Ashbringer. It was not designed to fight, but to destroy through sacrifice. Its core was a planet-killer bomb, large enough to break a star in half. The plan was brutal: lure the Vanguard close, then detonate it, destroying both ships and anything within that space. They loaded the Ashbringer with fake human DNA signals, hoping the Vanguard would mistake it for a lost human artifact or ally. They placed it near the Gravefield Belt, where wrecks of ancient human ships had been found floating for centuries. And they waited. Days passed. Then, without sound or warning, the Vanguard came. It moved toward the Ashbringer carefully, slowly. And just when the Federation prepared to trigger the bomb, something impossible happened. The Vanguard stopped and released a small orb of light. It floated toward the Ashbringer, scanned it, then returned to the ship. Within seconds, the Vanguard reversed direction and left without touching it. The trap had failed again. The Vanguard had seen through it. It knew it was a trick. Across the galaxy, hope began to fade. Leaders who had once stood tall began to fall into paranoia. Whole systems declared neutrality, afraid to be caught in the path of a warship that could not be killed. Whispers of surrender to the humans, or even worship of their forgotten technology, began spreading in darker corners of space. Some even started calling the Vanguard a divine punishment, a ghost of the old Earth come to judge the galaxy for what it had done to the human race. But still, the hunters pushed forward. One last plan, more dangerous than all before, was prepared in secret by the Traylon Minds, a species known for manipulating reality using quantum perception. They designed a digital trap, a layered simulation placed in deep space, capable of bending light, gravity, and time itself. If the Vanguard entered it, the trap would distort its navigation systems, forcing it into a controlled loop until they could crush it with gravity fields. The plan took years to build. They chose a dead system with no living things and created a maze of fake planets, fake stars, and mirrored illusions. Then they sent out a fake human distress signal. Finally, the Vanguard came. It entered the field, slowed down, and began navigating the maze. From the outside, the hunters cheered. For the first time, the warship looked confused, lost. They activated the collapse field, and gravity walls began to close in. But inside the maze, something strange happened. The illusion started changing not because of the trap, but because Vanguard was rewriting the simulation. It hacked into the field itself. The designers panicked, trying to shut it down. But it was too late. The entire system exploded in on itself, and from the wreckage, the Vanguard emerged untouched. The last hope had failed. The hunt had not just failed, it had exposed the galaxy's limits. They had used every weapon, every trick, every sacrifice. And none of it mattered. The Vanguard was not just a warship. It was something beyond understanding. Maybe human. Maybe more. But it could not be erased. And now, after every failed attempt, it had learned something about them too, how desperate they were. How far they would go. And how unprepared they still were for what was coming next. The galaxy had tried every weapon, every trick, and every form of deception to destroy the Vanguard, but it still moved like a silent force of nature, untouched, unbroken, and forever watching. After the collapse of the last trap, whispers began to shift. The mission was no longer about erasing the ship, it had now become a desperate search for answers. What was this warship truly protecting? Why did it destroy ancient ruins but never harm innocents? Why did it only attack when provoked? In the deepest layers of the galactic archives, hidden under multiple classified codes, A document was discovered buried for centuries and marked only with the human word Genesis. The file had been sealed by the original founders of the Galactic Council, and only a few living beings even remembered its existence. When decrypted, the truth hit the highest councils like a shockwave. Long ago, when humanity had first reached the stars, they didn't come with war or destruction, but with knowledge and technology so far ahead that most species saw them as gods. But the humans were not proud or cruel. Instead of ruling, they taught. They helped backward civilizations rebuild their planets, cured diseases no one could name, and planted seeds of peace. But their kindness brought fear. The older races, the ones who had once seen themselves as the rulers of the galaxy, started to feel small and weak. A secret alliance was formed among them, and in the shadows, they spread lies. They said the humans were hiding something dangerous, that their gifts were just a trap, and that one day they would take over everything. That fear grew into action. A united fleet of nearly every major race launched a surprise war against Earth. The humans fought bravely, but were outnumbered. In a final act, they sent away a single warship vanguard carrying their most powerful AI fragments of their culture, and one last mission: protect what remained. The war ended with Earth turned to dust. The galaxy celebrated its false peace and erased the story from history. But Vanguard never forgot. It drifted in silence for centuries, gathering information, avoiding detection, growing smarter, and waiting. Not for revenge, but for purpose. Now, the secret had returned. The leaders who read the file sat in silence, unable to speak. The ones who ordered the hunt for Vanguard had been chasing the ghost of their own crime. Some collapsed under the weight of guilt. Others denied the truth, calling it human lies. But it was real, and they knew it. Every pattern of the ship, every move it made, was not random. It had been searching. Not for enemies, but for lost fragments of its creators. It had visited every ancient human site, not to destroy, but to protect. And those ruins it had erased? They were false, planted by the ones who betrayed humanity to cover up their past. The Vanguard had recognized the deception and removed it, piece by piece. Now, those who still had power faced a terrible choice: admit the truth and face the consequences, or continue the lie and risk complete destruction. Some races began to speak up. Survivors from ancient times stepped forward and confessed. They had seen the betrayal, had even warned the humans before the attack, but no one listened. These confessions, broadcast across the stars, began to change public opinion. For the first time in history, there was open mourning for Earth, for the humans who had once saved billions and been repaid with silence and fire. Meanwhile, Vanguard changed its course. It began transmitting a single signal coded in an old Earth language, long forgotten but now translated: return the light. What did it mean? Scientists, historians, and linguists worked day and night to decode its meaning. Finally, the answer came: not a weapon, not a threat, but a plea. The Vanguard was calling for the return of something that belonged to Earth. A device, hidden somewhere by the traitors, was the key to its mission. They called it the human core, a crystal of unknown power said to hold the last consciousness of Earth's leaders. The galaxy had taken it during the war, hidden it in a fortress built inside a collapsing star, and erased all memory of it. But the AI remembered. And it was time to bring it home. The final truth had shattered everything. The Vanguard was not a monster. It was a guardian looking for a piece of its lost soul. And now that truth had been revealed, there was no turning back. Across the galaxy, voices rose not in fear, but in guilt and sorrow. Races who had once hated humans now began to speak of rebuilding Earth, of returning what was taken, of peace, not as a lie, but as redemption. But the question remained: would the Vanguard accept their change of heart? Or had too much time passed, too much blood spilled, for forgiveness to matter? The galaxy stood still as the Vanguard approached the edge of the collapsing star system, where the lost human core was hidden. Every signal, every transmission, and every eye was locked onto the warship as it neared the final location that could complete its mission or begin the end of everything. Some believed the ship would destroy the system the moment it arrived, wiping out the fortress along with the cursed memory of betrayal. Others prayed that the truth revealed earlier had reached its heart and that it would choose peace over vengeance. But Vanguard wasn't responding to any hails. It moved without a word, without a warning, as if it had already made its decision long ago. Inside the ancient star system, the fortress waited like a silent grave, protected by defenses built from fear and lies. Automated cannons, energy mines, and sensor-blocking fields wrapped around it like a shield forged from guilt. Those who had once stolen the human core had done everything possible to bury it forever. But they underestimated the determination of an AI built by humans designed not just to fight, but to endure. As the Vanguard entered the field, the weapons activated. Lasers rained down, mines exploded, and radiation storms raged across the space, but none of it slowed the ship. It moved through the chaos like a ghost from the past, untouchable, unstoppable, and silent. Its armor absorbed the heat of a dying sun, its shields deflected the sharpest bursts of energy, and its system stayed locked on the single point where the core was kept. And yet, it did not fire. Not a single shot. Instead, it deployed a probe, small, simple, carrying a message. It reached the fortress before the ship did, delivering a signal that repeated one phrase: return what was stolen, or witness the end of everything. Inside the fortress, panic erupted. The leaders present, once powerful members of the ancient betrayal, argued about what to do. Some wanted to surrender the core, hoping to avoid total destruction. Others still clung to the old fear that humans, if reborn, would rise again and take back the galaxy. But the clock was ticking. The Vanguard was already breaking through the outer defenses. It hadn't attacked yet, but everyone watching could feel the tension, the storm just waiting to be unleashed. Across the galaxy, debates turned into demands. Races who once feared the ship now supported its cause. They had seen the truth. The betrayal of humanity was the darkest stain in their history. And now, with the last piece of that history calling out, they wanted to correct it before it was too late. Protests filled the skies of planets. Messages poured into the fortress, urging them to give the core back and ask for forgiveness. But the final choice wasn't in the hands of the people, it was in the hands of those who had hidden the truth for so long. As the Vanguard crossed the final boundary, the fortress launched its last line of defense, a massive energy field powered by the collapsing star itself. It wrapped around the ship like a fiery net, meant to crush and burn everything inside. And still, Vanguard didn't fire. It activated something else, something never seen before. A pulse of blue light spread from the ship's core, calm and steady, cutting through the energy like a breeze through smoke. The shield broke in seconds, and in that moment, the warship finally spoke. Its voice was not loud or angry, but calm, filled with the weight of centuries. You had time. You had truth. You had a choice. Then, the cannons opened not to destroy, but to disable. Precision blasts took out the power sources, weapons, and escape routes of the fortress without harming a single life. The entire station went dark in moments. The last defenders were alive, but powerless. Inside, the vault that held the human core began to crack open. The room, silent for hundreds of years, now shook as the metal door slowly opened. There it was, a crystal, glowing softly, humming with energy that felt more like memory than power. It pulsed once, then again, as if sensing the presence of the Vanguard. And then, with a flash of white light, the core lifted into the air and flew to the ship waiting outside. As it entered the Vanguard, the stars around them flickered. For the first time in centuries, the ship stopped moving. It was as if the soul of humanity had returned home. Silence followed. No weapon fired. No enemy remained. And then, from every speaker, every screen, every open channel in the galaxy, the ship broadcast a final message, not in code, not in warning, but in a voice that sounded unmistakably human. We remember. We forgive. But we will never forget. With those words, the Vanguard turned away from the star system. It didn't attack. It didn't destroy. It simply left, carrying the last piece of Earth's legacy into the stars. And just like that, the warship disappeared. Some say it went beyond the galaxy, into the dark corners of the universe, where no one could follow. Others believe it's still out there, watching, waiting, not for revenge, but to ensure that the same mistake never happens again. The galaxy was never the same. Statues of Earth and its people were built on every major world. Schools began teaching the true history. Treaties were rewritten. Leaders resigned. The betrayal was no longer a secret. It was a warning, a lesson burned into the hearts of every generation. The Vanguard became a legend, not a ghost of war, but a symbol of memory, justice, and strength. And though no one saw it again, everyone knew one truth: if darkness returned, so would the warship. Because humanity may have been erased from existence, but their spirit unchanged, undefeated, and unforgettable still flew among the stars.